Well, hello, and welcome to Trash with a capital T, where we give trashy books and movies the love they truly deserve, and some deserve more than others. I'm your host, Bobby. New videos are posted here every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So today, in honor of upcoming Valentine's Day, which is going to be this Saturday, I thought I would cover something a little spicy. Now, I already mentioned in my wrap-up for 2025 that I was going to do this. And I had kind of been hemming and hawing and if I was going to cover it because this is an adult film. Not the same way like Beyond the Valley of the Dolls or Emmanuel was an adult film. This is an honest to God adult film. Like it features actual things happening. If you get my drift. I'm trying to be a little obtuse so this video doesn't get buried deep. But there is a reason that I want to cover this. And that reason is this was actually directed by one of my all-time favorite mainstream directors, a director all of you are probably very familiar with thanks to the Scream franchise and the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. This movie was directed by and actually features in a non-sex role Wes Craven. Now, he did not use his real name when he directed this. He used the name Abe Snake. But he is all over this movie and the box. So the movie is The Fireworks Woman, although it also is released as The Fireworks Man. There's Wes Craven right there. The copy of the film that is on the Blu-ray uses the title card for The Fireworks Man, but the IMDb uses Fireworks Woman. So I'm just glad I can hold this up. Like, look, the artwork they did for this release is actually quite pretty. And they did a very classy release for a not very classy film. So this also has another horror heavyweight behind the scenes. Sean S. Cunningham was one of the producers of this film. For those who are not familiar with who he is the director, producer. He gave us Friday the 13th, one of the longest running big studio horror franchises. So there was a lot of people who were just starting out in the film industry who worked on this film behind the scenes. In front of the camera, there are some notable adult stars from the 70s. This came out, I want to say in 74? 75. This came out in 75. So you have Jamie Gillis shows up, and anyone who, you guys probably don't know who any of these people are, but if you do, Jamie Gillis was a pretty heavy hitter in the adult film industry in the 70s and 80s. Oh my God, what is his name? Eric Edwards plays one of the main roles in this. So there are people who went on to have careers within the adult film industry, but in front of the camera outside of Wes Craven, it was mostly just people who wanted to be in a dirty movie. Is this good? Is it worth hunting down if you're over 18 or 21 or whatever your local laws are? No, it's not. It's an interesting oddity. And I can see that a lot of what Wes Craven would bring into his mainstream films, you see touches of that here. And I feel like he took this seriously. I know he hated this movie, even though he is all over this. His character, Nicholas Burns, kind of is this like mystical creature person who shows up through various scenes and kind of guides the main character through her story towards her inevitable end. And I'll get into the plot in a second because it's a doozy. But I don't think he was happy with how it turned out because it's an adult film, so it has to have a specific focus on adult content. And while the film starts very story and character heavy, it eventually devolves into a sex film. That is inevitable. That's what you're making the movie for. That's the expectation when it gets released. And if I remember correctly from the extra features, on this disc, this movie did not do great when it came out, partially because it is not a very sexy film. The erotic content in this is quite uncomfortable and kind of depressing. Also, it deals with some pretty themes. Although films with similar themes would come out later and do much better, and as we can see in the modern day adult film market, similar themes are very popular. This movie deals with subjects like incest. So people were probably a little ooked out because it also deals with it in a very kind of emotionally dark way. Now, I'm calling this movie dark. This is not something that is extremely shocking or brutal or gross or anything like that. As far as the erotic content goes, it's actually pretty straightforward. There's a few kinks that pop up that might turn some people off and maybe make some people flee the room, but nothing like too shocking. It's mostly within the narrative and within the character motivations where the darkness really seeps in. So, get into the plot, because there is a plot. It's not a strong one, but there is a plot that drives the film forward. So we start by meeting two adult siblings, Angela and Peter. Angela is played by Jennifer Jordan. She was going by Sarah Nicholson when she did this. She went on to be an adult film star. She did several films after this. And Peter is played by an adult film legend by the name of Eric Edwards, who worked, he's still around, but I don't think he works anymore, but he worked in the industry for probably about 40 years. They are brother and sister. They are very close. And within the first 15 minutes, we see how close. And their relationship is obviously not that healthy. And to make matters even more complicated, Peter is leaving for the seminary to become a priest. But the problem is his sister is in love with him, and Peter can't admit that he is also in love with his sister. And V.C. Andrews would see this plot and go, it's a bit much. So Peter leaves, he cuts off almost all contact with his sister Angela, and he becomes a priest. Angela's only contact that she has with him throughout the film, outside of fantasy sequences and the opening sequence, is she goes to him to confess. Because what ends up happening is she throws herself into this kind of twisted world as she tries to find love, and instead only finds people who want to use her, with the exception of maybe one or two people. And that is the driving force of the film. As this goes on, we have this character played by Wes Craven who is kind of watching her and at times even guiding her, although it isn't until the end of the film that he directly involves himself with telling her, if you want to be with the person you want to be with, there's going to be a cost. And that cost turns into her corrupting several members of Peter's congregation and drawing him out. It is a very depressing film. Jennifer Jordan does a good job as Angela, but the Angela character is very tormented. So is Peter, but we spend more time with Angela. She's really the driving force of the film. And while the acting is not stellar, I think partially that's because they did a really good job cleaning this up the best they could, but it's still a very low budget film that was shot very quickly. So the audio quality is not excellent. The video is the image is very grainy. This was shot on film, but it's very grainy. So when you have kind of muffled audio, it can also dull performances. And I think that what's happening here. But she gives her all. Like, she really tries. And she does have a lot of dialogue because this film is very driven by narration. And it gets kind of confusing at times because then we have other characters who start narrating with her. So you have these conversations between the narrators happening over scenes where characters are having conversations. There's a lot of early filmmaker mistakes in this movie. This was Wes Craven's second film after The Last House on the Left. He did this several years before the release of The Hills Have Eyes. I am not a fan of The Last House on the Left. I think tonally the movie is a mess, and that kind of carries over here. I feel like The Hills Have Eyes is where you really see him kind of, as a filmmaker, land, where he is starting to get a hold of his craft and really become the director who would eventually go on to make iconic characters like Freddy Krueger. This one is very dreamlike. It's very ethereal. You move through various situations very quickly. You don't have a solid grasp on time. There are some interesting things that almost give it like a stage play feel, where the characters that Angela encounters then go to Peter's church because they're part of his congregation to confess to him. And that's where he learns about her exploits. The basic gist is Angela and Peter consummate their forbidden relationship. He leaves, tries to cut off complete contact with her. So Angela moves onto a boat and kind of tries to waste away. She ends up meeting this other couple. And that's the first time she really experiences any tenderness. It's with another woman. But at the same time, she's also working for this typical adult film character, rich lady who's all into decadence and light bondage. It's really not sexy. It's really not. And so she's introduced to some good characters and these other characters who just kind of want to use her. Um, and then later on, we start to see her have this weird effect on people around her, namely these two fishermen who become obsessed with her. And there is a scene that starts out hilarious and gets very horrific very fast, where one of the guys attempts to assault her, one of the fishermen, and the other fisherman knocks him out with a fish, like a big actual fish. But then that leads to a scene that I was not prepared for, but I'm going to warn you about here. There's a sexual assault scene in this movie. It is not simulated. It is not fun to watch, and you can bet your butt I hit fast forward real quick when I saw what was coming. Luckily, you can see that it is coming, but yeah, didn't really appreciate that. But I also understand the 1970s, when it comes to these kinds of films, pushed a lot more boundaries than what we see in a more mainstream adult film industry today. So I know they were and this was also a time when these movies were more about telling stories that included sexual content than it was about creating stuff that's purely for sexual enjoyment. And part of that is because these were released in theaters. That's also why you had famous people or people who are trying to make it a mainstream feel okay working on these movies, because the movies would come out, their names wouldn't actually be attached to them. They would play in a few adult theaters and then they'd vanish. There was no real home video market in 1975. So once this movie left theaters, it might have toured around for a little bit, ended up in a few viewing booths, but otherwise it didn't have a home outside of film. And I don't know if this one actually ever got a VHS release. It was kind of buried until recently. It was not easy to find. Vinegar Syndrome's one of their partners, Quality X, released this one. I don't know if that's an in-house one or a separate offshoot. They did a beautiful job with this. As you can see, the packaging on this is gorgeous. It's actually, I'm making sure I'm not showing anything untoward. No. The packaging on it is really nice. It's a beautifully done set. It's a beautifully done transfer as best they can do with the materials. There's some good extra features on here. Part one is from one of Wes Craven's biographers. Another is a friend of his who was involved with him around the time he made this movie and actually spent some time on set while they were filming it. So you have an idea of what's going on historically with Wes Craven when he was making this movie. And it's very clear he was not happy with this film. He was not happy with the material, and I don't think he particularly enjoyed working in adult films. What is very interesting, and they cover this a lot in one of the special features, is they really push how conservative Wes Craven's upbringing was. Specifically, he grew up in a very conservative, I want to say it's Baptist, like, environment. He actually went to Wheaton College. Wheaton is I grew up in Wheaton. I went to a grade school that was on the campus of Wheaton College. It was a Christian grade school. So I understand the environment that he was in. Wheaton College is the alma mater of Billy Graham, if that gives you any idea. So with that, I think that's what kind of brings in a lot of the views of sexuality and the guilt and the shame that is kind of portrayed in this film. This is not a happy erotic romp. This is a fairly dark movie. It doesn't have a particularly dark ending. The ending is Peter and Angela run off together on a boat and vanish into nothing. Like they just vanish from the world. Just abandoning their lives to be together. Which, I mean, I guess that's a happy ending. I don't know. Do I recommend Fireworks Woman? Not really. Not really. The sexual assault scene alone would be enough to tell people to skip it. But if you are still interested, because it's a Wes Craven movie, it's actually one of his lost films, essentially. If you are someone who really, really wants to see all of his work, it is widely available. The Blu-ray is beautifully done. It's worth the money. As an oddity, it's interesting. As a film, both adult or otherwise, as like a viewing experience, it's really not great. The movie's not long. I think it comes in at like 70 minutes. But it is not it's not entertaining. It's not exciting. It's not anything. I, to be honest, was quite bored through most of it. Um, you know, it, as a historical artifact, it is quite interesting, but I can understand why Wes Craven was not happy with this film. Apparently, they talk about this on the special features. The After they were done with it, Wes Craven cut a 60-minute version of this that he was much happier with, that removed a lot of the erotic content. And I could see that this working as a short film, as a short psychological study of these two characters. Because like I said, the two leads do actually do a decent job with the material. The acting in this is much better than what you would expect. There's no like, here's your pizza, ma'am, extra sausage kind of stuff. This is actual dialogue. They have monologues. There are actual scenes where they have to emote and act. So it's not a complete waste of time, but if you're going in expecting some lost gem, you're going to be disappointed. This screams early film. This screams experimenting and learning, which is good. There are some beautiful shots in this movie. Especially a lot of like the establishing shots of this marina where she keeps her boat. Like, he catches some beautiful moments. There are some well done shots and scenes. The script is a mess. It wanders around. It has no real structure. It's very, very dreamlike. It very much is of the era. So keep that in mind. Yeah, don't recommend it. But am I glad I finally saw it? Yeah, kind of. I love Wes Craven. He was one of those directors that I've always been a huge fan of. I've enjoyed his films. Deadly Blessing is actually probably one of my favorites. The one with Sharon Stone getting the spider dropped in her mouth. I love that movie. Like, I love his films and his weird films, like Invitation to Hell with Susan Lucci, the TV movie. It's a great, great film. Highly recommend it. So I enjoy exploring some of his lesser known works, and I finally got to see what was essentially his lost film. But go in really, really prepping yourself for knowing this is an adult film from the 1970s, and it comes with all of the trappings from that. And I do not think I'm going to be making a habit out of covering adult films on the channel. Sorry, guys. But I really wanted to talk about that one. I thought it was a very fun movie, or a fun experience. The movie itself was actually not that fun, but it was a fun experience finally seeing it and seeing what he did early on in his career. All right. So, general housekeeping. If you like what you see here, give it a like. It makes me feel good and it helps the channel. New videos, as I said earlier, are posted every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. If you guys want to leave a comment, let me know of any of your favorite Wes Craven movies or any other lost films that you'd be kind of interested in hearing about. Let me know. All right. Love what you love. Enjoy what you're reading and watching. And have an amazing morning, afternoon, or evening. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.